Right. Well, thank you very much. And I'm following on from Stefano's presentation and really sort of going through, taking his points about digital twin and digital thread and speaking about a digital earth as the ultimate digital twin. So my name is Richard Simpson. I'm speaking to you from Brisbane in Australia. But just the first question is about, why bother with a digital earth? Well, when we're starting to look at the challenges we have today with COVID, I mean, there's the big challenge that's always going to be over our shoulders is climate change, and we really need to be looking at sort of how we can bring together these technologies to really give us a chance in that battle going forward. But I want to share with you just some of the thoughts about, so really, what is a digital earth? And I'm sort of throwing three ideas forward there. We can pick up really where Joseph was talking about, looking at digital earth as being the ultimate digital twin. There's also another journey I'd like to take you on, is just looking at a collaborative knowledge continuum. So bringing all the different sciences together and being sort of a challenge there for digital earth. And then we can look at the arts and the sciences coming together about the expression of place and things like that, and maybe exciting new ways of considering that in terms of moving into a post-COVID resilience. So the first of those is looking at digital twin as the ultimate, digital earth as the ultimate digital twin. And I'll put this diagram together. So we've really got two types of digital twins. We've got the zombie twin, which are pretty much things that we've put together for the last 30 years and largely geometric, but they could be topological. And then we have the voodoo twins. So when we start activating these twins, again, with the IoT and other things, concepts that have been introduced in previous presentations. But the other thing is that when we start looking at the digital twin, it's getting more and more obese as it's going through this maturity continuum. And it's got different dimensions. So, we've got a dimension of data, we've got a dimension of the model, the complexity of that model. There's also another dimension that's dealing with the interface and the way and the metaphor of that digital twin. And again, sometimes it's more valuable having a digital twin of a topology than it is of a geometry. And then we've got multiple levels of detail of that twin as well. So some levels of detail may just be an iconic sort of thing. Other times it may look and to resemble sort of the physical entity that's there. Then we have the analytics sort of capabilities, and then the whole of life cycle aspects. And then when we sort of take a digital twin and sort of adding them all together to get a digital earth, we've got the granularity of the scope of it. And there are other dimensions, such as looking at the digital twin as a potential monetary value, which we'll briefly touch upon in this presentation as well. So not only have we got the digital twin there, but we've also got this other sort of amorphous type sort of digital twin, which we'd call a regulatory twin. And so looking at the 3D cadastre, so looking at rights, restrictions, responsibilities for that. Or like, for instance, some work we did in Auckland, looking at sunlight control studies and looking at the accessibility of sunlight to different sort of parts of the world and starting to sort of then develop envelopes around that. We can be looking at microclimate. We can look at sort of properties like odor or contamination, or we can start looking at disaster with insurances and other sorts of aspects that go with it all. Maybe looking at safety and maybe looking at sort of other things there, maybe looking at sort of COVID hotspots and things like that as well. And so these are things that are less tangible than your physical sort of digital twins, but they're very important to consider and obviously have got big ramifications, such as looking at the 3D cadastre about ownerships and rights of particular assets, things that you have there. And one of the things that we can look at is safety is always an important driver for these things. And we look at safety for connected autonomous vehicles. And we've got sort of a great example of an autonomous digital twin with this, where we've got sort of multiple layers, including sort of behavioral layers like the priors layer. We've got a semantic layer, so bringing ontologies and things like that in place. We've got geometric maps, we've got base map layers. We have high definition maps that are there as a contingency for if the other sort of the robotics and other sorts of capturing on these machines or these robots fails. So it's a good example to start thinking about this and how it then connects to the weather systems and to other vehicles. And then you can start thinking about, could you scale that up across lots of different domains and create the digital earth? And that gives you a bit of an idea of just the starting points. So the second thing I want to share with you is some thoughts around sort of a collaborative knowledge continuum. And one of the things which, when we look at digital earth, is we should be thinking about it as a complex adaptive system. So it's continuously emerging. We may never get to a digital earth in the sort of full vision because it's going to continue to emerge and evolve. And again, sort of dealing with sort of simple sort of components, and again, starting to bring these different elements together to create sort of complex functions and the different sort of control systems and everything else. And as Stefano was talking about, is patterns. And this is a wonderful book by Christopher Alexander, and it's called The Pattern Language. And again, starting to apply this sort of thinking to help us build this complex adaptive systems that we're talking about. And again, sort of allowing us as mere humans to deal with the complexities of modeling the planet that's around us. Another way to look at Digital Earth is to think of it as an ongoing continuum. So the Human Genome Project, it took 10 years and now it takes 10 seconds, if you like, to go through there, trillions of dollars, not big ethical issues and everything else. Then we can go up to the transcriptome, metabolome, and proteome sort of projects. And then we had the physiome project, which is being used a lot with looking at sort of vaccines and things like this. This is the sort of the system to look at sort of mathematical drug testing, drug discovery and testing. Again, this is complex when you've got all the different sort of bodies of the organs of the body being sort of modeled. And, again, sort of looking at sort of the spatial scales and temporal scales. And then you look at Digital Earth in the context of that, it's enormous, by magnitudes bigger in spatial scale and similarly in temporal scale. And really, these are all just a common continuum. When you're looking at, say, a pollution field, that would be Digital Earth, but then you're looking at your own lung, it would be in the physiome, but also maybe if you've got different sort of genetic diseases, you've got the Human Genome Project and everything else coming together. And you'd like to be able to look at sort of your risks and things like that you have that. And similarly with COVID and everything else and pandemics. When we start looking at the Physiome Project, it's very similar to what we're doing in Digital Earth. We're sort of breaking things down into different sort of components. We've got cells, we've got tissues, we've got organs and organ systems. But we're also not just looking at things from a polygonal point of view, we're also looking at things from a volumetric or voxel sort of approach. And as we're sort of bringing all this sort of data together to get some sort of sense of it so we can create these biophysical models. So this is just a microcosm, if you like, of Digital Earth, just as similarly as I was talking before about the autonomous vehicles and things. They just give us a little bit of a snapshot of really what this Digital Earth is. And again, these ontologies that are developed for the physiome and things like that, again, sort of when you start looking at Digital Earth, you've got the same sort of challenges, just a different sort of scale and different sort of things. Not to say we're looking for Parkinson's disease with a Digital Earth, but you can be looking at sort of causes of these different cancers and things that can be coming from environmental impact and everything else. Or we can start to get a deeper and deeper understanding about places and the actions and the impacts of the actions that we take around the planet. So the last point I wanted to discuss is looking at, could Digital Earth be the next Renaissance? And we look at the Italian Renaissance, and again, I shouldn't be talking about this, we just had Stefano and Alessandro, both Italians, but anyway, the Renaissance, there was various theories, but one of them is that it was really sort of this shake-up took place with the pandemic, with the bubonic plague that took place. And really that sort of had the impact on the social, the economic, the cultural and the religious sort of factors that then sort of gave the environment to get the thinking and get the ideas working, which then led to the Renaissance that sort of took place after that. And so perhaps in this post-COVID world, we will sort of be enlightened in the same sort of way that they were in the Italian Renaissance, and look at this as a new way of expressing ourselves about places, expressing the arts, and starting to look at the world itself. And again, one of the great figures of the Italian Renaissance is Leonardo Da Vinci, and he had the Vitruvian Man. But one of the amazing things about Da Vinci, and this was raised, was it last year in Florence at the Digital Earth Symposium that was there just about a year ago, we had presentations that mentioned about Leonardo da Vinci as really the father of Digital Earth. And so the Da Vinci Globe, which was just recently rediscovered in England, actually. And then we've also got this incredible map projections that he came up with as well, which were the first maps to show the New World, so the North America and things on these maps. An extraordinary man and sort of what he achieved. And again, another thing in the Renaissance, you have sort of, Mona Lisa paintings, but the scientific naturalism that they could achieve that reality. And again, sort of perspective. So how do you capture a three-dimensional world around us and then put it onto a 2D canvas and starting to look at the conventions of perspectives that you can then sort of accurately draw things, but also bring it onto a canvas and then project back from that canvas to something that could be measured again as well. And so, just important breakthroughs that took place. And so today we've got augmented reality, and this is some work that we did. In fact, when I was in Florence last year, I moved my iPhone around and sort of took some photographs of some augmented reality work we're doing. And this has got real-time sort of data coming through about a sewerage system that's in the Hunter Valley in near Newcastle. And we could look at sewer flow. But I'm standing in the Pitti Gallery, or is it the Uffizi Gallery in Florence here, looking at it with these great masters from the Renaissance there. But in some senses, what we're doing now with digital Earth, and again with augmented reality and everything else, we're doing sort of, in essence, what they did with perspective, but we're bringing that into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dimensions that could go forward. But if you grab that UR code, again, these slides will be available. You can then sort of download that onto an iPhone. We only developed for the iPhones and iPads, and that'll give you an example of what's there. But also, I mean, one of the things with the Renaissance, it was incentivized by the Medici family, who were patrons. And again, when we look at digital Earth, yes, we could get patronage for it. It's hard to get, but getting governments and other different sort of groups to get in behind it and get research going forward. We're starting to see things like, for instance, in Australia, we've got Digital Earth Australia. So the federal government's put some significant spend on Digital Earth Australia. And we're seeing this in other countries as well. But also, we spoke about it with the autonomous vehicle. I mean, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our safety and well-being is going to be very important based upon a digital Earth. And it's certainly through COVID and things like that, there's a real awakening, if you like, for the importance of objective science. And then there's other ways of starting to look at it with smart contracts and different ways to reward ecological regeneration or other health protection or performance of projects and things like that. Again, this is an area where it can have application that becomes sort of part of a procurement or funding sort of process. We can be looking at more policies that are more shifting towards the demand side rather than supply side. So looking at, again, with objective science and looking at carrot and stick type sort of things. Or we could be looking at a whole monetary system. This is some bold ideas, looking at the global for, there's various monetary sort of models that have been put in place. But could we have a digital twin sort of similar to carbon or gold or silver as a commodity-based monetary system? And so looking at truth of a digital twin, the truth of its matching with the physical world as being part of its value and having an encouragement for improving value. As Stefano mentioned, with the digital thread is really sort of it's the meat behind it all. The digital twin is really the explicit aspect, but the digital thread is the important part. And again, sort of, it starts resembling blockchain sort of technology, but blockchain on steroids in a sense, because you've got the whole life cycles of these assets and things like that. And we can start looking at these other sort of, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that have come out of gaming in a sense, but sort of how do we sort of create these assets that aren't currencies and sort of start sort of, getting value to that. And so there's an interesting example that Nike have just recently been awarded a patent by the US Patent Office. And again, this is there to look at sort of their, these shoes, and it's allowing your shoes in its digital twin and using sort of cryptographic sort of blockchain sort of methods to start then sort of connecting them both, so you can't steal the digital twin of it. And again, with your shoe, you can actually digitally breed it with another shoe and then manufacture that shoe. So if you like, the atoms of the shoe and the bits of the shoe are very sort of tightly interwoven together, and things that you can do in one have ramifications for the other as well. And so this is just the starting points, just like what we're talking about with autonomous vehicles, just as we looked at with the physio and things like that. We're seeing hints into really what this exciting future could be and its importance to us in the world. So again, really, what is the digital Earth? And again, is it the ultimate twin? Is it the collaborative knowledge continuum? Or is it the next renaissance of the arts and sciences? And so what we're seeing is really a blurring, really smashing these silos. And again, Stefano, as Alessandro sort of spoke about sort of smashing these silos in his presentations, but looking at the physical and digital worlds sort of really coming together and being one and continuous. We're also looking across the scientific continuum. We spoke about the Human Genome Project and dot all the way through Digital Earth. Could we see all this as one and continuous across these different disciplines? And can we see the arts and the sciences become expressions of place or expressions of ourselves or of our identity in a similar sort of continuum and create sort of new and exciting sort of ideas that could be engaged with over maybe a post-COVID renaissance? And so it demands new thinking, it demands bold new ideas, and it demands an understanding of how we actually objectively look at ourselves, identify ourselves with the world in which we live. And it's one of the things when we start looking at this is a critical infrastructure for the future of humanity. Digital Earth will be critical for food security, critical for water security, critical for addressing challenges like pandemics and climate change and all the other sort of issues that we've got that are going to come up. And it's becoming a collective human machine sort of super sense for our survival through the Anthropocene. So as we're sort of moving into these unprecedented times, I mean, our natural human senses like smell and touch and things like that evolve for our survival. We need more than that now to get through these next stages. So just some thoughts. And again, sort of, there is this God sort of aspect of it all, but then on the other side, we're still very human. And what we can sort of do in this brave new world will be absolutely amazing. It redefines what being human is. So I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity. And over to the next speaker.